It's Couples Plus, Ladies Edition.
So hi everybody, welcome to Couples Plus, and here we have Jessica Soares, or the
Holy Hedonist.
Thank you. I've been following you since before you created the second account, so
Cool.
I just want to say, like, what I love about you, and one of the reasons that I wanted to bring you here is just all about pleasure and just all about your wants and making sure you live your life to the fullest, and that's so beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I feel like it's important shit, right? Like to live our life the way we want to. This beautiful playground of a planet we've been gifted.
Absolutely.
So, Jessica, could you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are?
Yes. I'll start by saying that there was no way I wasn't going to end up here, right? Like since I was a kid, I was born and I always liked indulging and like having exactly what I wanted in the way that kids do, but also from this really unapologetic place, right? My mom, I remember from a really young age, my mom being like, you are going to need to be rich because you just like really nice things. Like you like a nice lifestyle. And I'm like, that is true. I will be. So don't worry about that. But really for me, it's about that like permission to be and explore everything that is available, right? I believe that that's the only reason we came to this planet, is to experience and to express who we are. And my first dream really was acting, still is one of my biggest passions. And I went to school for it. I went to NYU. I made a short film. I did a couple of off-Broadway shows and I love it. I love performing. And it really gave me this connection to my creative self, to the part of me that is about expression and being seen and tapping into the emotional range that we have as humans. And I think that was also the start of my journey into emotional alchemy work, because the things that happened in that room, and that especially when I went to my conservatory training postgraduate, transformed me completely. And that's when I started to, I've always been really into the witchy part of life. I started trying to astral project at like age 7. I've been reading tarot since I was 11 years old. That's always been a big part of my identity. And in undergrad, I studied the intersection of performance and psychoanalytic theory, because I had this hypothesis that the work that we do as performers is what allows us to better get to know ourselves, to better self-actualize. And then I got to experience that for myself in the acting classroom. And then as life happens, things happened. I worked with therapists, I worked with coaches, and I never had plans on becoming a coach or any kind of wellness practitioner, helping professional in my life. And then it happened, like one person was like, oh, do you like coach? And then 2 people. And then the third person was one of my oldest best friends. And she was like, Jess, I really think you should look into this like professionally, because people really love it. And I did. And in my first year, I loved it. But I was like, a lot of this is like very mindset focused, not fun for me. Like, it's just not fun. The work just feels kind of grueling. Like, where's the good part, right? Like, why are we waiting for the good part? Why isn't it now? And I'd always been so connected to my own sense of pleasure. So I began infusing my work with that. And that's really when I found more traditional terms of like feminine embodiment work in the polarity space and somatic healing. And that like blasted everything open. And developing that connection with my body is kind of where I was like, oh shit, okay, this is what I love. Like, this is what I want to do. And here we are, you know, kind of like weaving all of those threads together, so to speak.
So yeah, I think like you brought up a really cool point that speaking from like a therapy perspective, it mirrors a lot of like how sex therapy is sort of evolved. And from my understanding too, from sitting back and being like, you know, dream interpretation, really heady like stuff, into being like, you know, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, tell me about your mother kind of shit. And then moving through like the paradigms into internal family systems or like somatic experiencing and just being like, what actually, how is my body responding to this? And so it's cool to hear that echoed in other work too. Oh, that's just a comment. It's not a question.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, that is what I found missing in therapy too, was just like, okay, but what about the body? Or even when because I worked at a meditation studio for so long, like I've been really into more new age spirituality for a while. There was a lot of that missing too. There's a lot of like talk of like ascension and transcending and like a lot of the upper chakras focused. And then you come across all these like super disembodied people that's like, whoa, like there's a reason you chose Earth for this lifetime and a human body. So trying to bypass that is bypassing the first thing, the only thing that can experience in truth in real time, right? The body cannot lie, whereas the mind immediately puts on a filter, immediately has a perspective, immediately creates a story.
Right. Yeah, I think that's like really beautifully said. And yeah, I'm curious how you've helped or what blockages you see for people from experiencing their own body, and what your perspective is on that.
I would say a lot of what I've seen and what I experienced myself is seeing kind of like control and tightness in the body, right? I remember when I started my movement training, the first exercise we ever had to do was walk across the classroom in a diagonal line, just like walk in a diagonal line. And it just felt like, okay, we're just walking. But in that one walk, the teachers were able to see exactly where you're holding and exactly where the tightness is. And that now is something I see reflected in my own work. It's like, oh, we're holding there's just so much tension in our life, like in our mind and how tight we hold our stories, but also in our bodies. And then like you can see the energy start to move through people the second like their shoulders drop, something changes, right? Like your voice drops. The second you move into more circular motion, especially if you are someone who's more connected to lunar cycles, hormonal cycles, there needs to be, or shall I say, I have found a lot of benefit in there being more flow and more just like less planning and more just like being more what is actually happening and expressing that. And I think that's something across the board, I could say we all need more help in, is just learning how to let go a little bit, like loosen up.
Right. Yeah. Super cool.
No, I notice that in my own self, like I'll just be sitting there and consciously be like, okay, like breathe, like let go. I mean, like as a mom too, like I feel like there's just like this automatic like tightness in response. Like if I'm out with Ellie, like it's like I'm on hyper aware mode or whatever. And then I'll be like, okay, breathe. And like to feel your whole body you're like, wow, I'm really holding a lot of tension in stress. Or even when I'm just laying in bed, like if my jaw is tight or what, I'll just be like, okay, relax your muscles. And it happens so frequently, like how many of us are walking around with all of this tension all of the time. And I think it goes back to, I really liked what you said about, a lot of the work being in the higher chakras. And like I meditate religiously and I'm really there a lot of the time. And there's been times it's hard to come back down and to be here. And for a long time, I like didn't even feel like I belonged on this earth, which is why like my body was like, wait, and holding all of that stress, just trying to keep me down because I do want to just be up there. But like you said, our point of being here is to, embody. And embodiment has been one of the words that has come up in all of our conversations and coming back to the body and really enjoying the human experience. Like you said, like we chose to be here during this time, during this chaos. And, what has kept me sane through these last bunch of years was like, I was put here for a purpose during this time. Like, my light is needed, and all of the things that tried to pull me into the darkness and into the chaos and all of the facade, if you will, of the world and everything else. It's like, no, like, I'm meant to be here right now. I'm meant to share my light. And that's why I feel like all of us are coming together, because we're kind of this new age generation of, like, we're doing the work, but we're embodying too. Like, we're the older modalities of therapy are like kind of phasing out, and we're here to kind of teach a new way of doing it, and really a more holistic way, like mind, body, spirit. Like, it is all, like, you can't have one without the other. Like, you can't heal the mind without healing the body. You can't heal the body without healing the mind. So anyway, just, I relate to a lot of what you're saying, and I love the way you worded it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that idea of, yeah, I feel like sometimes it can be easy to be like, oh, we like totally fucked up. Like, somewhere along the way, like, humanity totally fucked up. And it's like, well, there is no fucking up. Like, to think that the universe is not working in perfect divine intelligence is so ridiculous that it's like, yeah, no, we did what we had to do, so that now we have the infrastructure so that people can begin to think and feel the way that we are, right? Like, we did the foundation. If we're thinking of Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like, there's a reason self-actualization is at the top. Sure, it's a pyramid that's been debated many times, but what isn't, right? And it's like, okay, the generations before us did a lot of like taking care of those basic needs. And now it's our job to remember like ancient wisdom, and to remember, okay, like, we've done enough of that, and enough of like the mind and the growth and the constant, like, more. So now it's like, okay, how do we bring it all together? How do we achieve that union? Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think like a great point is to thinking like embodiment as self-actualization, and that you can't go there if your needs aren't being met. Like, if there's a reason, I used to think, like, back in my grad school days, that I wanted to do way more crisis work. And I realized the type of therapy I really like to do doesn't gel with that. I can't go work like in a crisis center and be like, what's your body doing with that? Like, because it's
right
to make you safe right now. And like, that is important. And I still bring that into my work, but understanding like you can't put the cart before the horse. You can't be like, oh, I feel like we almost like romanticize that of, oh, you're so enlightened with your needs not being met, instead of saying like, it doesn't work that way.
No. Yeah, for sure.
I'm curious what you mean when you say embodiment, just because it has come up a lot, and I feel like everyone has their own like idea, and just what it means to you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. I think for me, ultimately, it means being fully present in and with your body, fully present and expressed in and with your bodily sensations, your bodily experiences, right? Because our body is always talking to us, right? Like, something happens and somewhere in our body, it is responding. And if you pay close enough attention, if you're still enough with yourself, if you're connected enough with yourself, you begin to hear that, right? You begin to feel that. One of the first exercises I do with all of my clients is calibrating the body compass. And that's like just anchoring in what is your body yes and what is your body no. Because so many of us don't even know that, right? It's like, oh, I don't know. Like, yes and no comes from the mind. And it's like, oh, but your body tells you way before your mind, like, if this is a hell yes, or if this is like, I'd rather not. So it's that state of being fully integrated, right? Like your soul and your mind being integrated and expressed through this beautiful human body you've been given. So it's like truth matching, right? So I'm not thinking one thing and experiencing another thing. Like, it's all gelling together. It's all in alignment. And that is contributing to me being able to be like, oh, this is my unique expression of consciousness in this lifetime. And I am fully in acceptance of that and loving that, like celebrating it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like not like trying to talk yourself out of whatever the response is. And I mean, that almost like bridges us into ideas of consent. And like, I can't remember where I picked up this phrase. I don't think I'm the one that coined it, but if it's not fuck yes, it's no. And using that kind of framework with people has been a positive thing to be like, when you're like, yep, that's like what I want to be doing. And there's a difference between that and going, I don't know if this feels safe, and that being an interesting thing. Because like, I don't think we can go into a dichotomy, and that being I really need to re-examine that.
Yeah. And I like that like re-examine, because actually when you said that, I also thought of like, if you're having conversation with your friends and you're like, oh, I don't know if they're into me, like I'm not totally clear. But if you know someone's into you, that never comes up, because it's like there is no question about it. It's like, oh no, like they're into me or I'm into them. So when that question comes, it doesn't mean that they're not, right? Or you're not. Maybe it just means like something wants to be re-examined. But it's so funny, like the moment that question comes up, it's like, oh, something here. There is like some insecurity here that's like being bred.
And some of that can be our own insecurities. Like I know like my overthinking, or, I'm projecting it on to that person. Or like I've also noticed that the universe, is funny at times and is like, no, like I'm going to make this situation kind of uncomfortable. And like, you have to set new boundaries. Like you need to work on different levels of communicating. And it's maybe not that they're not doing that, but like I've been working on breaking some old patterns from trauma responses as a younger child. And it's like, okay, like I'm being tested to do the work and to grow, and it's not always going to be handed to me, but it is funny, like when I make decisions now, like I kind of do that in my head, like if it's not a fuck yes, like what, like should I really be doing it? Like should I be putting myself in that position? Should I be I don't know, it makes me think if my body has that response right away, like I'm always like, okay, maybe this isn't the best for me right now, but
right now.
And things change fast. Like it, just because it's today doesn't mean tomorrow we can't wake up and the energy is different. So, and I think I've practiced a lot of detachment. Like it's not good, it's not bad, it just is. And what am I supposed to learn from this experience, even if it doesn't like go all the way through, like in a relationship or whatever? Like, what did I learn along the way? Like what nuggets were there and placed in my path, and how did I heal from them to then bring it to the next situation? But I do that with friendships, I do that with jobs, I do that really with anything. Like I'm like, okay, like let's just go for the ride, see what happens and see what I'm going to learn, and not be so focused on the outcome. Like I feel like we spend so much of our life waiting to get to that happy place, or waiting for this monumental thing to happen, that we don't appreciate the journey and take all that we're supposed to learn along the way. And then you get caught up in the disappointment of things not working out, or it not coming to fruition the way you had it in your expectations. And so I've really tried to live more like in the moment and just appreciating each day for whatever it brings.
Yeah. A little bit of a switch here. I know that you are very open about how you are so polyamorous. So if you can tell us a little bit about that, how you came into that and your experience.
Yeah, sure. I use the term solo poly because that's just the easiest one, though I don't really like any sort of like a label or identifier. I immediately go into like, but there's the inner rebel in me is very strong. So when was it actually? Like, I don't know how it came into my field, because I had been in a monogamous relationship for 4 years, a long distance monogamous relationship. And I crushed it. Like there was no part of me in it that felt like, oh, this isn't for me, or that like I've never cheated on a partner, that had never been a thing for me. And I know that's also a lot of people find polyamory, but I have always been into unconventional ways of living, unconventional lifestyles. And I lived in New York City. So artist community, New York City, someone who's really into sex and sexy conversations, I inevitably found this community and these different communities. And at first it started from just this place of like intellectual curiosity, right? Like I'm obsessed with just like learning things, experiencing things. I'm like, ooh, here's this other way of living. Like, let's go to these events. Like, let's see what's up. And slowly it started to be this thing where I'm like, I found more space for me, right? Like more space, more options, more choices for different ways of living. And that really spoke to me. And it's been a beautiful journey. I have a partner in New York. He's married. He just had a baby. Yay. Very happy. And I would say that him and his wife have been incredible teachers and guides for me, because they have this incredibly strong, beautiful relationship and connection and intimacy, and one that like I hadn't even seen in many monogamous relationships. And I was like, that for me is true love, right? Like it's not possession. I remember being in high school even, and I would say like my friends would be like heartbroken or whatever. And like hadn't refined my sharp edge so much there, but I would be like, yeah, but love just isn't enough, right? Like love the way in human terms we think of love, right? Love. Ooh, sorry, I just missed that. What did you say?
The way in modern society, the way that we have been like taught to think of it.
Exactly. And I was like, yeah, I just knew very young that wasn't enough. Like the way that we did it. I'm like, what are you going to do if like you don't trust your person, you don't respect your person, but like, oh, I love them, so I'm going to stay in this kind of shitty situation. And that for me was unacceptable. Any kind of shitty situations, like I don't want that in my life. Mm-hmm. And I found in the poly community so many relationships and so many dynamics that were like, oh, this is like love embodied. It was for me a spiritual choice, right? Because I was like, this allows me to put a lot of my spiritual beliefs into practice of non-attachment, of being love, right? Like showing up as love and sharing that from a place of abundance and not scarcity. And so I think in the beginning, it was kind of like a conscious decision of, oh, this allows me to practice the theory, because that I think is also where there's a major disconnect in a lot of things. There's a lot of theory, like right nowadays, especially in the millennial generation down, everyone's aware of their triggers and past traumas. And like, we can talk to death about all of these things that are like going on within us. And then it's like, okay, and then what? Like, so now what? Like we've been given all of this information for what, to what end, right? There needs to be a practice component of it. And exploring relationships in this way for me was such a way to do that. You know, like I got faced with all my triggers. I was like, oh wait, now I have to have the uncomfortable conversations. I'm not just talking about having them. Like I'm sitting there, my body's on fire, right? Like I'm sweating all over the place. I want to cry, but I'm doing it. And then with each one, I felt my capacity expand so much more than like years of reading about it had ever done. And so now I'm at a place where I'm like ready for a primary and ready to explore more with one partner, not with one partner, but with one partner on my side as we continue to explore. But I'm really grateful for the past 5 years, because there's been so much just like learning about myself and about people. And for someone who loves to know how people think, it's been delicious.
Love that.
I'm the single one in the crew, but like single by choice in a lot of ways, but I relate to a lot of what you're saying, because like I love like getting to know people intimately, whether it's, you know, platonic relationships or romantic relationships. Like if I can't know you at that soul level, at that deep level where, you know, and I've spent a lot of time over the years, like with married men, but it's because like it wasn't even about the sex. Like it was it was really the conversation and getting to know somebody. And like, from all those, I got to understand more about myself. And I was like, wait, like, people get married and then they like don't have these intimate conversations with like anybody else ever because it's deemed inappropriate. Or I'm like, it's the human experience. Like, I feel like I'm cheating myself if I'm not like, no, proper boundaries and respect and everything need to be in place, and the consent and, you know, it, doing it in a healthy, non-toxic way. But I'm like, I just want to explore and learn and soak in as much as possible. And even with physical intimacy, like, I feel like I've learned from every person that I've been with. And I'm like, I look at people who got married when they were 25 and like, that's like the last person that they've been with. And I'm like, oh my God, like, how did you do? Like, you're missing out on so much. Like, there's so much to explore. And I, you know, we've, in our conversations, just like, whether it's religious shame, societal shame, even the shame that I, you know, feel as being a single mom and still exploring my sexuality and owning my sexuality and not being like the regular mom in, you know, the pickup line for school. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, I don't know, I don't have a title on what I am or how I feel, but I'm like, I just know that I like getting to know people and learning. And I remember the first time I went to a swingers party, somebody brought me there and I almost felt like a documentary filmmaker. I was like, I just wanted to like interview everybody. I was like, tell me your story. Like, there was nothing, I didn't even do anything with anybody at the thing. I was just like talking to like a couple who've been doing it for like 40 years and like, just wanting to hear everybody's experience and what got them there. So I love finding new things. I think with every new person that we meet, it's like, there's that opportunity to also grow within is well, but
yeah, absolutely.
I figure that somebody else is living, you know, I'm not the only one. I like it.
I mean, I've actually been to I think more, maybe equal, but more parties where I haven't engaged than I have engaged. Because here's the thing, like, I am holy hedonist, holy hoe, sacred slut, but I am so picky. I'm like a
you have to
be bitch.
Like, energy. It's energy. Like, I can't just let any energy up in me and around me. So yes,
exactly. And it's so funny because a lot of people will assume not, because they're like, oh, you're so open and you're so free. And I'm like, yeah, because I know what I want. Like, I'm not like going around like just like accepting what I don't want. Like, I'm picky. Like, it is an energetic exchange, and it's like a lot of my time. And like, yeah, you got to treat that shit as sacred, you know, not scarce, but yes, sacred with a reverence.
I like the juxtaposition between like the holy hoe or the holy hedonist sacred slut. Like, yeah, that's, and I'd love to hear more about that if you're open to talking about it, about how you came to that sort of moniker.
Yeah. Oof. Actually, it came through the specific name, like holy hedonist, as an offer. Like, I was creating like a one-on-one like shadow work offer. And it was a not successful launch. So if anyone's like, oh my gosh, I did a launch and it was crickets. Yes, it was one of those. But then later I was like, oh, but this is just the name of like my company, my brand. This is just like the name of my practice, right? Of the movement that I want to pioneer. Because for me, yes, I am, like I said, I am a Taurus sun. Literally like 70% of my activity is in the 5th house. So creativity, pleasure, expression, play, all of the things that we associate with hedonism, right? And I mean, traditional definition of philosophical hedonism, that the pursuit of pleasure is right and good, right? We've also twisted that in our modern day society to be something pejorative as well. But for me, all of those things are beautiful and amazing in and of themselves. And I am ultimately a person who is here for her spiritual evolution. Base foundation of everything I do. Like, that is the purpose of why I'm here. That is what I believe for me is my most important and sacred calling. And I happen to have chosen hedonism as a path to God. right, as a practice is like, really for me, pleasure is my prayer, because I believe that, like, you know, we're all cosmic stardust. We are all one of the same. We are consciousness experiencing itself through various forms. And if I hold that to be true, then I also have love for everything, all forms of me, all forms of you. And so to be able to find pleasure in that everything, even in the moments of like pain or discomfort or the things I don't like, is a true act of reverence, right? That is an act of prayer. That is me saying to the divine, to supreme intelligence that, like, yes, I trust, I have faith. This is beautiful too, right? Even if my human's like, oh, this sucks right now. Like right now I am going through parasites, kidney infection. I do not feel great. For the first time in my life, my body is like, I'm losing weight. I'm like, what in the hell is happening? And then yesterday I really had to like lie in bed and just hold myself and be like, okay, like ultimately, you know that this too will be for your higher evolution. Maybe not now, maybe a year from now, but this too is happening for me. And that for me is like pleasure as a practice, right? Because it's not like I'm enjoying this, but it's that knowing that it's for something beneficial ultimately. Sorry.
All good.
I liked that. How it capped it right off perfectly.
Timing.
Yeah. So what is a typical like session or like a working relationship look like with you?
Oh, I would say there's no typical. They're all so different. Like, gonna be honest. I work with people one-on-one and in group containers, and then in-person workshops and retreats. I would say that in-person stuff is my freaking gold, my magic. It's the thing that I love more than anything. And it's the thing, I'm a performer. Like, that is my background. So speaking, holding space, like encouraging people to step into their own inner artist and creativity, for me is what's most like satiating and delicious. And there's also the part, it's my name is like Holy Hedonist. I'm really obsessed with like the dark goddess. There's a part of me that's very into like the taboo, like the naughtier, the dirtier, the more unacceptable for, you know, polite society, the more I'm like, yes, tell me more. Let's dig into this. So it depends. Like, I work with people one-on-one. It might look like we're doing a guided visualization. A lot of times it looks like standard coaching, you know, mindset work. Embodiment work is something I encourage all my clients to do every day. So it might be something I like guide you through in a couple of sessions. I also do one-on-one somatic release sessions that I call the soul surrender practice. So it really depends on what the person brings to the table, because we're all coming from different things. Like, at the end of the day, even if we have the same story, right? Even if I'm coming from the wound of like too much, that's my main wound, is like, you're just being too much. And that's what a lot of my clients struggle with. It varies, right? Like, we all have different stories. And for me, it's more important to just be fully present with what someone is bringing, and then working with that, and working in a way that feels intuitively led, but also mutually created, right? Like, it's something that we are co-creating, me and the client together. My background is in psychoanalysis, as I said, my undergrad, and then modern applied psychology. And then a lot of Eastern philosophy, a lot of tantric practices is in my work. And then the one that I find more unique in the field is a lot of performance-based practices. So a lot of things have been pulled from writing and theater in my work as well.
Awesome. Do you have any specific like plays or performances or writings that you really resonate with?
Ooh, yes. Off the top of my head, I really, really love the work of Anais Nin, the writer. Yes. Amazing. Do you guys know Lux ATL?
Yes, I was just in a container with her.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Wait, we're going to have to talk so much more about that. Such a Lux fangirl. And for those who don't know, Dr. Lux ATL, aka Lindsay Byron, her real name, is an English PhD / stripper, and her work is so incredibly beautiful and inspiring. And her memoir, Too Pretty to Be Good, is one that I love to assign to anyone, because I really believe that it is like the pinnacle of shadow work. That is true, like integration work transformed into art and shared with the world. And I think for me, like first and foremost, being an artist, I find art the most potent tool for true healing and alchemy. And so that book is one that I'm like, you know, when people are really like not accepting themselves, down on their shadows, when we're just like, ugh, like there's all these horrible parts of me, I'm such a judgmental bitch, or like I'm way too needy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, please, dear God, like read this book. And like, it's one of the most raw pieces of writing I've ever read. So highly, highly recommend that one.
So do you have any projects coming up, or how can people stay in touch with you or follow you? Or
yeah, definitely come follow me on Instagram at holyhedonist.way. I love voice notes and I love conversation. And I have a retreat coming up in Mexico at the end of October, and we have a few spots. We have 6 spots left, maybe. We have 2. One is October 20th to 24th, and then October 26th to 30th is actually like a witchier dark goddess shadowy version. I think we only have 1 spot left for that one. I think so. People are like, ooh, yes, snatching up that one.
Are these for women only?
Yes, these are women only. It's called Pussified, a pleasure and purge extravaganza. It's a feminine embodiment retreat. And I host it with my friend / lady love / girl crush. We're obsessed with each other. Wendy Hopper. And she's a sex, love, and relationship coach, and she's amazing. And yeah, we just like during the pandemic, she messaged me. She's like, do you want to do this retreat together? And I'm like, hell yes. And then we had it last year on the Quintana Roo near Tulum. And it was amazing. It was one of those moments where I remember like very clearly floating in the pool and talking to one of my friends who would come. And I was like, I can't believe this is my job. Like I was just in full gratitude. And there's something so, I love the work, right? I think it's always beneficial, but I think something changes when you come together in group with other women who are also committed to being just as like wildly expressed. And like you said, Adriana, that sense of like, ooh, I feel empowered, but it's also empowering to watch someone else like come into their own. And this is not like a standard like yoga and meditation at 6 a.m. retreat. Like we do a lot of like good workshops and stuff, but we get wild. Like this is like skinny dipping at midnight under the moon, and like we do a sacred temescal. We do like a lot of really ancient ceremonies, and then a lot of creative expression based and like art based work. So it's really, really beautiful, and it's really wild. So if you're someone who like balks at the word fuck or a sight of pair of titties, might not be your seed. But if that excites you, I invite you to come play with us.
I think they're watching or listening to Couples Plus. More than likely, they're not scared of any of that stuff, because that's where we're at as well.
Fuck yes, love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. What songs are in your sex playlist?
Okay. Yes. This question. Okay. I don't know if these are like in my playlist for like in the moment, but definitely for me to turn myself on, the classic Pony by Genuine. Always. Like I don't know who doesn't get turned on to that song. And probably anything by Rihanna. Work is one of my go-tos for sure. And there's one more. It's a feature, her and someone else. Can't remember, but anything Rihanna will also get me in the mood. And I do think it's important to turn yourself on and make sure you are in that place before expecting that from someone else or engaging with someone else on that level. So those are my 2 that I'm like, I love stripping to those songs. Oh, and My Oasis by Burna Boy. Yes, definitely. That one too. My Oasis, Burna Boy.
Dope. We're slowly creating playlists for.
Okay,
our
I love that.
We'll add that. What is your hope for humanity in terms of sexuality? This will be my last question.
Please. Like, oh, so many. Truly, my greatest hope is that we create a world, a society where people feel safe enough, comfortable enough, empowered enough to explore and own their sexuality, whatever it might be, right? Without the sense of needing to perform or needing to please or needing to placate or needing to assume any kind of role and mold, allowing themselves to be, ever evolving and curious, right? I believe that when we lead with curiosity and courage, everything else is much more delicious, right? Because we have these assumptions that we know, like, oh, I never want to try that. It's like, but you don't know until the moment, right? Like maybe just being a little more, 5% more open, 5% more curious can lead you to 90% more pleasure in your life. And why not, right? And I just dream of a world in which these conversations are not seen as outliers, right? And these are conversations that are suitable for the family dinner table and the political debate floor, right? Because I do believe that sex and sexuality is such an important part of our life and who we are as humans. And it reveals so much of our inner world that once the shame is removed from that, once we're really allowed to express, I think be a game changer for humanity as a whole.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to highlight or elevate or shout from the rooftops?
Yes. I just want everyone to touch themselves more, self-pleasure. I feel like that's something that the work of Betty Dodson is a really big part of my work. And she wrote Sex for One, which is amazing. She's like a sex researcher back in the day, 60s, 70s. And I feel like self-pleasure, masturbation is still one of those areas that even in the sexuality field is still kind of like, this is uncomfortable. And I think that if you don't have that level of like openness and shamelessness with yourself first, it's going to be damn near impossible to achieve with anyone else, right? And I'm not saying that healing happens on your own. Actually, no, I believe healing happens relationally. Things you do on your own are just to prepare for those moments. But to get to know your body, what turns you on, right? Go out there and explore. There's so many different kinds of erotica. Take control of your sexual expression, like in your own hands. I think so many people wait to be partnered, to be like, to explore all of these amazing transcendental moments. And you really, really don't have to. So I want to encourage everyone to go out there, go to a fun sex toy shop. The workers are always so helpful and so knowledgeable, like pick up a book on the subject, read some erotica, listen to some erotica, and just be like, ooh, what else can I know about myself? How else can I get to know myself through my body and through my pleasure?
Awesome.
Amazing.
Like I super want to thank you, Jessica, for coming on and talking to us about your journey and your perspective. I'm definitely going to be like chewing on a lot of that mentally today, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This has been so fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm like, how can I get to Mexico a month after we do the Dominican?
Oh my gosh, don't even tease me like that. Oh, with all your hats. Oh, I just got too excited. Come to Mexico.
So yeah, thanks again for coming on, and we'll let you know when this is going live. Is there anything else that we've forgot?
No, y'all are amazing. I'm so glad you're doing this. The world needs more of this. So much more of it. So
much more. We're going to make it happen, all of us.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Hell yes.
All right. So I'll see the rest of y'all when I see ya. And thanks again, Jessica. And I'll be following you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Astro, what's the exit? What's the exit, Kat?
oh, we got to keep it footloose and fancy free. There we go.